But I'm going to be just kind of mentioning some things today, talking a little bit about our art, and one of the things that we do in our Shaolin Kung Fu, we have such a variety of stuff in there, but some of the things that people are often wonder and they're confused about a little bit is what exactly are we teaching here at the Chinese Shaolin Center? And a lot of times, what happens is they have this idea about what, maybe because what they've seen in movies or what they've seen online, what they've been told, what they've heard, whatever it is. And so they have this idea of like maybe, what the Chinese martial arts are compared to what the Japanese martial arts are or the Korean arts or whatever it might be. And so today I wanted to come on and kind of just discuss a little bit, some of the misconceptions, and starting with even just what we call the Chinese martial arts, which the modern day term right now is Kung Fu. And so Kung Fu, everybody knows, is the Chinese martial arts, right? But few understand that the term Kung Fu doesn't mean martial arts at all. In fact, it means mastery through time and effort. So mastery through time and effort, and that can be, mastering anything, not necessarily martial arts, but mastering anything. So you could have, if you're a runner, you could have good Kung Fu as a runner. You could master the art of running. You could be a cook and have good Kung Fu. And so again, just as you attempt to master the cooking aspects. And so really anything that you can think of that develops skill and ability, that's again what Kung Fu can be referring to, right? And that's a term that has stuck. It's a term that we've adopted as well too, even in the modern day here have accepted, and we refer to the Chinese martial arts as Kung Fu. And so we could be referring to it as Chuan Fa, the military arts. We could be referring to it as Wushu, which literally means martial art. The reason that we don't refer to it in that regard is the fact that first, Kung Fu is a more popularized term, meaning martial arts, whereas the Wushu is a gymnastic sport, as I've mentioned in some of the past my past lives in there, right? My past lives, as I've mentioned in my past lives. So, but not those kind of past lives, right? Or maybe so. But again, the Wushu represents nowadays is going to be the acrobatics, the gymnastics, something that you would see on the screen, on the film. So actors and other people practice Wushu, more of the performance arts, and they're devoid of all the martial skill and ability and intent and focus. That's not the focus of that. And so we don't use that term, either. But again, Kung Fu, in 1973 when the television series came out, that's called Kung Fu, that's what introduced the West to these Chinese martial arts. Before that, the Chinese martial arts were not well known at all. In fact, the generic term of karate encompassed all types of hand and foot, martial arts and fighting, and people just refer to everything as karate. People still refer to karate nowadays. My kids still sometimes make that comment, where they're like trying to convey that, hey, they're doing martial arts and they're doing karate on the screen, or whatever it is. And so that term Kung Fu, since it is the popular one and the one that people associate with Chinese martial arts, we still use that today. And we call our stuff again Shaolin, Kung Fu, and Tai Chi. And specifically, we call it Shaolin because it is of a Shaolin temple lineage. And another thing that I hear all the time, people when they come in sometimes to our center or online, whatever it might be, and they have some questions. Sometimes what they do is they're wondering, they go, so are you guys doing, a Japanese martial art, Because when they look at it just physically with what maybe we're wearing and stuff like that, they're thinking of it in the sense of that looks like a karate gi. In fact, I remember I had a person come in to take a look at some classes, and I'm not sure what side, they were coming from and looking in at. If it was the Chinese side, as far as like that they've experienced some Chinese martial arts where they did not wear this type of uniform, that they used maybe the cross, the frog buttons, that go down, kind of the shirts, we call them the Mao shirts, but the frog button uniforms. Or if they were coming from a Japanese point of view where they were looking at us like going like, hey, that's what we wear, and you guys aren't Japanese arts, Japanese martial arts, so what's going on here? But he came in and he was at the desk, and I was trying to explain to him, some things that we're doing here. And he's even looking around at all the different weapons on the walls, and he's noticing, hey, Carly, how you doing? And he was noticing that, hey, you guys are how come you guys are using, he just asked a question, how come you guys are using, Japanese weapons? And I told him, I said, well, actually, those are Chinese weapons. And so again, whether it was the nunchaku, he saw the sai up there, maybe the tonfa, things like that. And so, of course, those are the words in Japanese, because again, the Japanese arts, more people since the World War, are more in tune with the Japanese arts, and so even nowadays we'll refer to certain things with the Japanese name, but it doesn't mean they don't have a Chinese name equivalent. So, but as I was kind of explaining to him, well, actually we do, those are the Chinese weapons. He's even saying, like, why are you guys wearing, these type of uniforms? And I explained to him, well, it's a Chinese uniform. And that, he got upset at some point, and I was being real polite and kind. I was even smiling a little bit because I knew where he was coming from, in the sense that whatever he had seen and heard and learned in the past, this had totally blown that away, in a sense, right? I had totally shattered, his idea of what he had learned and seen, and what he thought he comprehended of what Chinese martial arts are and what Japanese martial arts are. And here I come and, I do that to him. So he was angry, and he stood up and he told us that we weren't doing, we weren't teaching the right stuff, and we weren't doing this, and we're a bunch of crap. And I literally got upset, and I just said, well, if that's the case, I said, have a great day, and there's the door, and he left, So, but he left in a huff. In fact, he didn't want to leave at first. You could tell it didn't sit right with him. He wanted some sort of satisfaction that, no, he was right, that all the stuff that he knew and had heard in the past, that he was correct, and that here we were, doing everything wrong. But, it didn't get into any kind of incident other than him just being upset, and he finally walked out, So I kind of want to, address today and talk a little bit about, looks like Carly practicing outside in the grass. Awesome, yeah, beautiful day for practicing your Shaolin Kung Fu. But again, if you guys have anybody that that you want to invite, on over to the live right now, feel free to do that, because I'm going to talk a little bit about what this Shaolin Kung Fu is in comparison to, and this Kung Fu Tai Chi compared to, what people maybe think it is, right? So what almost are like secrets again of what we're doing here in Shaolin Kung Fu. But we talked about, the word Kung Fu and the meaning of that, but also, with the different weapons and different things of Japanese origin that people think are of Japanese origin. People don't realize, when they when you go and look at some of the architecture in Japan, it reminds you of Chinese architecture, doesn't it, a little bit? And when you see some of these temples and things like that, now they do have their very own flavor and style, but sometimes it's hard to discern, is that a Japanese temple? Is that a Chinese temple? Okay? And when you think about their the Japanese language, it reminds you a little bit of the Chinese language. And there's a reason for that, right? And the same thing when you think about their religion, the Japanese religion, reminds you of the Chinese religions a little bit, So, and again, there's a reason for that. It's because the Japanese, adopted the Chinese religion. Zen Buddhism is Chan Buddhism, the origin. They copied, their language, they copied their culture, they copied their martial art, as well too. And so it's interesting how people can understand, some aspects that the Japanese culture evolved from the Chinese culture, but then when it comes to martial arts, everybody thinks that, the Japanese martial arts, were created on their own and were invented by just the Japanese with no other outside influence or something like that. And as we know, that's just not the case. And so, and this is kind of proof to it as well too. Regardless of what other Kung Fu schools are doing, we are still doing hey Chris, over, how you doing? We're still doing the traditional classical aspects, including what we wear and things like that. In fact, we have a mural outside of our building, a very beautiful mural. Two murals actually go along both sides of the walls, and done by two different of our black belts. But the one out in front, we had them do that depicted a scene from the Shaolin Temple, actually, that's there in China. And they're in Honan province. And if you ever get a chance to travel with us to the Orient at some point, you'll get a chance maybe to see it for yourself. But in the Shaolin Temple, in the White Robed Hall, they have a giant mural. There's two of them actually, and one of them has all of the monks portrayed, training and doing their empty hand. The other one has them all doing their 18 classical weapons. They're all fighting with weapons and different things. They're all training out in the courtyards and things like that. And what you're going to notice about those murals that are over 500 years old is that they're all wearing this uniform. They're all wearing cross-top V-neck uniforms. They're not wearing frog buttons, And in fact, I've got a book, so that there's a few different books that depict that too. And you can kind of see, I'll kind of put it up to the screen for you guys, but you can kind of see in here how, again, they're wearing these uniforms. Maybe that one's not as good as you can maybe see this one a little bit better. But again, they've got colored belts. They've got V-neck uniforms, and of course, there's plenty more of those pictures as they're all, again, crossing the murals and doing different things, different weapons and such. But you kind of get my understanding of as far as hey, this is the classical way to do it, tied with the belts and everything like that. And then another interesting thing too is that most modern day, even from the 60s and different things like that. Hey, Crystal and Lee, welcome, guys. Just talking a little bit about some of the secrets of Shaolin Kung Fu, starting with the word Shaolin or Kung Fu and where that origin is, but also talking about our uniform a little bit and how a lot of times people might think it's of Japanese origin, but really it's of Chinese origin. But when people think about Kung Fu, they think about stuff like this, right? They think about the wushu, the performance arts. The arms are straightened out and locked out and things like that, and people behind watching, as people are competing and things like that. But the cool thing in this particular book, it's called The Way of the Warrior, and it's really one of the books I do recommend. It talks an overview of different martial arts and things like that. But one of the things that, one of the sections that it has in here is they go to talk about the Tai Chi, the Pakwa, and the Xingyi, which they call in this book the soft arts of China. Not that China doesn't have hard arts too, right? In fact, we do them all. We do them both. In fact, all the hard arts have softness in them, and all the soft arts have hardness in them. People don't understand that aspect very much. But what was interesting is that one of the modern-day masters, his name is Hung Yisheng, and Hung Yisheng was one of the last, if not the last, modern-day master to retain a lot of the traditional ways once his family fled China during the Cultural Revolution. Hey, Robin, and hey, Ingrid, how are you guys doing today? Good to have you here, ladies. And but one of the things that he did was when he taught, even this was still in the 60s and 70s, and as this book went to interview him for these particular arts of the Chinese martial arts. Because remember, this book talks about all kinds of different martial arts. But when they get to Kung Fu and Shaolin, first they did talk about the origin of Shaolin, but then they go and they talk and interview Hung Yisheng. In fact, there's a documentary on The Way of the Warrior where you can see footage and everything. And one of the things that you're going to notice in this book and in that documentary is that all of Hung Yisheng's students, they are all wearing the uniforms with belts. Right? The traditional, classical, again, way. Now, not that you can't do Kung Fu, right, in your t-shirt and in your sweatpants or whatever it might be, which is fine, right? The top one there shows some guy just doing it in his plain clothes. Of course, they also show him smoking, right? A lot of the masters in the Orient, unfortunately, smoking up. But you'll see again the student at the bottom, and he's in what somebody would say is a Japanese uniform, right? Except for the fact that he's doing Chinese Kung Fu, he's doing Pakwa, right? And Tai Chi and Xingyi and all this other stuff. And so again, people don't realize that is a classical uniform. They have a very classical uniform. Nowadays, when we think of Tai Chi and other aspects, hey Austin, people think of, again, people in frog button uniforms, and they're just stepping through their Tai Chi. Now, when we see people doing that, that's, we think of people, in their frog buttons, and what they're doing is they're just in their regular clothes, just doing martial arts. Just like that one guy was in, a plaid shirt or something like that. Well, at some point during the Cultural Revolution, of course, everybody was equal. They're in the communist China, and they all wore frog button uniforms, or at least frog button shirts. That wasn't their martial art uniform. That was their everyday clothing. And so when they did their kung fu and they did their, their Tai Chi or whatever it might be, they wore their traditional clothing like that, right? If they were even allowed to do something like that, especially during Cultural Revolution when they weren't allowed for 50 years. But then in the 1980s or so, like when those pictures were taken, people went back to training in the old ways, and at least whatever they could remember, and they just wore whatever they could wear. And then for some reason in the West, we see people doing that, and we go, oh, so if I'm going to do Kung Fu and Tai Chi, I need to get a frog button, and now people are dressing out in that manner. For them, they just already dressed that way. For us, people are like putting on these frog button uniforms, putting on what we call like their silk pajamas to start going through their martial arts. And that's not traditionally classically what they did. Like Shang Yisheng and his students there in Taiwan, you put on your uniform, right? And the same thing, when we see these movies and different things, we see these Shaolin monks and they're all out there performing their kung fu in their robes. Well, those robes are not training robes. Those are their meditative robes. And not that you can't fight in meditative robes, and not that you can't train in meditative robes, but that's really not, we can all train in slacks and, suits if we wanted to as well. And you could do it in high-heeled shoes, right, if you wanted to. But I wouldn't really recommend that as far as if you really wanted to do some real training. How much can you really do? So same thing with those frog buns and all that type of stuff. First off, everybody was forced to wear those in the Cultural Revolution. So why would we want to adopt something that was forced upon everybody? Because the people who were doing martial arts at that time, they were all imprisoned or killed. And in the old ways, people don't understand the history and background of the Chinese Cultural Revolution and things like that. So we don't honor that era by conforming, to, hey, Kyle, we don't honor that era by conforming to what they told everybody that they had to do. We go back to the traditional training, which is the V-neck uniform with the belts, as we see in the murals, we see in some of those books and things like that. So that's one of the things that people don't understand, is that this is, and some people go, why are you wearing a Japanese uniform? I go, this is a Chinese uniform. Where do you think the Japanese got it from? So in fact, even the kanji, the character karate, it means China hand. Right? That is the original translation of karate, China hand. And it wasn't until like the 1930s that they changed it to same pronunciation, but they created a new kanji. They created a new character that's pronounced the same way, and then it means open hand instead. It's because of the Japanese militarization and how they did not want to be associated with some sort of Chinese origin for their martial art. They tried to get away from that by changing it like that. But historically, obviously, you're not going to get away from that. They even admit to it to this day. Go on Wikipedia or whatever it might be, and any place talks about origins of karate, we'll talk about that kanji character and how they trace their arts to the Chinese martial arts, which means China hand. Okay, so that's where they learned it from China. And so again, with misconceptions sometimes is that maybe that we're not wearing the proper uniform, right? Because people in their minds, they're kind of again just thinking that they know what the Chinese, should look like, and it blows them away a little bit. And the same thing with the weapons. We have like the sai, they call cha in Chinese. The nunchaku are called arche quen. That's where again nunchaku come from, arche quen. So you can see how there's very similarities. Just like the language when you say in Chinese, whether sai jian is goodbye, they say sayonara in Japanese, So again, there's a lot of these little similarities in the language and in the cultures, and even in the writing looks very similar. And like we said too, even the Japanese get their religion from the Chinese as well. So again, when people ask you, why are you guys wearing karate uniforms, it's like, no, this is a Chinese uniform. It's a classical, traditional, northern style uniform. We've been doing it for over 1,000 years like this. and the Japanese have not. They've only been doing it for maybe 100 or so. So again, it's one of the aspects, right? Is our uniform, and of course our belts as well too. The Shaolin monks. The other thing that you'll see at the Shaolin Temple, which is really unique too, are the statues. There's these bronze statues that are hundreds and hundreds of years old there at Shaolin Temple, and it depicts the monks, and they have them like doing different positions. In fact, it looks like they're doing karate from what people think of as karate. A lot of times, when people come in, they go, hey, I've done karate in the past, and I really want to try the Chinese martial arts because I know that they are softer and they are more circular, right, than the Japanese are. Just like that. Those are, involve circular movements, as if we don't have any linear movements or any power and hardness. They're all thinking it's like soft and relaxed and circular or something. Now, there is that. But there's the other aspects as well too. In fact, that's why, where do you think the karate came from, right? It came from our Chinese martial arts. Well, did they, change it and create some sort of linear, strong, powerful? It's like, no, they adopted that aspect of the Chinese martial arts. The only difference is that's all they adopted from the Chinese martial arts. It was just that linear aspect and, stances. But again, when you go to the Shaolin Temple, you'll see these guys in their classical bow stances and classical horse dances, and these statues, bronze statues depict them, with their hands out punching and everything. And what are they wearing again? V-neck uniforms. Hundreds of years old again, right? Before karate was even invented. And here are these statues again at the Shaolin Temple in origin. So, again, a lot of different proof of the facts that we have, again, these uniforms that are classical. And then with the belts, I want to talk a little bit about the belts, because the belt ranking system is a very modern Japanese thing, in a sense, as far as like dividing up levels and all that stuff. The belts are not. Just wearing a belt is a Chinese concept, as you see in the murals and in the books and all that type of stuff. That's nothing, that's of Japanese origin. What might be considered of Japanese origin is, labeling the belt certain colors and having certain, things that you have to do in order to reach these certain belt levels. And it divides up, the arts into these levels like that. And so that is something that we did adopt at some point, whether it was my master's master or his master, wherever it might be. Someone from the Orient at one point did realize that adopting those levels like that is, especially for non-Shaolin Temple people. The Shaolin monks, it's like they had their whole lives to train. And in fact, I love the one Kung Fu episode. If you haven't watched the original episodes from 1973 or so, and they're asking Kwai Chan Caine, I think it's the first episode, and they're asking the young boy, so how long have you been here at the Shaolin Temple? And the young boy says, a very long time, right? To him as a kid, it's like, man, I've been here forever, right? And haven't learned a thing, they haven't taught me anything. I'm just lighting candles, sweeping, floors. And the master, again asking him, so how long have you been here, young Kwai Chan Caine? And Kwai Chan Caine goes, a long time, sir. And then the master kind of, stops for a moment and waits. And then, of course, Kwai Chan Caine reflects, thinks about it a little bit, and he looks at me and says, not that long, master. I have not been here very long at all. And so it's like that perspective, is, so unique in that regard. But I love that Kung Fu episode that kind of talks about that, because at the Shaolin temples you did have all of this time, and in the West we seem to be so rushed and so goal-oriented, and everybody's on a schedule all the time. And I'll meet you at this, I'll meet you at that. I had an 11 o'clock phone call this morning, to talk with somebody. We had to schedule it and things like that. You can't just call up anybody anymore. It might not be a good time, right? So whatever it might be. So here in the West, and maybe just in the modern day, maybe not even just in the West, but here in the modern day, things are a little bit different. And we are more goal-oriented, and we are more time constraint-oriented and things like that. So we have divided the lower levels into 4 levels: white, yellow, blue, and green. So white, yellow, blue, green. So white belts, everybody who comes in as a new student is a white belt at that point. And, other arts might do it a little bit differently, but, for us, what we tried to do was retain the colors of the belts as they would have naturally changed, because you don't get new belts in the Orient. In ancient China, at Shaolin Temple, everybody got one belt, and it always started out white. And of course, the more that you train, now when you wash, your uniform, you just wash your uniform. You don't actually wash the belt. Okay, so for lower belts that have just joined, you've got your uniform. Wash the uniform. Okay, please wash your uniform, especially after you train, after a couple of training sessions. But then at that point, don't wash your belt. Okay, the belt always remains like it is. And fortunately for us nowadays, your belt won't be getting dirty, stinky, or anything like that, and you will be getting new belts, because the amount of training that is required for a belt that's white to naturally change colors, we would have to be like the Shaolin monks, and we would have to train 12 hours a day for the next 80 years for those belts to change the colors that they did. And in the Orient, there were people who put that much kung fu, that much time and effort into their martial arts, that the belt turned from white belt into yellow belt. Because you know how a shirt, that might be white or something like that, especially under the armpits when you sweat a lot, when you do a lot of sweating, and the minerals, that are coming out of your body in there kind of get into your fabric, there's a point where you can't wash that out. It gets to the point where it's yellow. In fact, some of you guys, maybe you have your favorite shirts, and your significant other is like, you need to, destroy that. I'm going to burn that shirt one day. It's not even because it smells bad. It still smells like it came out of the wash, but it looks so dingy, and it looks so yellow in the different areas that white just turns into yellow. So our second belt is yellow, because that is the natural progression of that fabric changing that color. And then for when you get dirt and things on you, because you get to, now you're a yellow belt, you've been training hundreds of hours, let's say, and then you're getting into the ground a little bit, and you're getting more, like dirty in a sense, you start getting that tinge of, and so you might have shirts, I've had them before, especially ones that I not only work out in, but I do physical things, whether it's yard work and other things, and they do get that blue tint to them. There is that like dirtiness. It's like a yellow, but it's a dirty yellow, and it does literally start to turn like blue. And if it takes long enough, it will turn like a bluish color. So our next level is blue. And then if you add more yellow and blue, you get green. So the belt turns green at some point. And then later, when you get dirtier and dirtier, and you're now training in the dust, and you're doing down and ground fighting, you're washing your uniform, but then your belt is turning brown. And that is our next level of brown. And at some point, if you continue training diligently and hard, eventually that belt is going to turn black. Okay, and that's why, again, that black belt, when you saw someone in the ancient Orient and they had a black belt on, hey Mary, how are you doing? When you had a black belt on in the Orient, you had some skill and ability. You had some kung fu. Because you had been doing time and effort, right? Kung fu, time and effort. You've been putting a lot of effort into that belt and into that training. So that meant something back then. In fact, people still nowadays, they go black belt. That's like the level to get to. Because in the Orient, it meant that you had been training very, very hard. And you had most likely had developed a really good amount of skill, in whatever it is that you were studying. So again, the black belt. And then later on, we start getting into, these different, red colors. Like at our master levels now, we got the black on the outside, but then at the master levels, we start adding like red stripes, or in this case, we start with a white stripe and a red stripe with the black on the back. And there's again, different levels of mastery. We kind of start over again in a sense, where it's like now, you're the white belt master. And the red starts to indicate, like when you get the stripe, sometimes you get that red stripe on your belt when you're 5th degree black belt. It's indicating, more like that it's blood, because people who had been training that far and that long in the Orient, would start either, fighting other people that challenge them, or they've been around so long that now they had to use their martial arts, or they even, like some of the Shaolin monks did, they fought for the country from the invaders that were coming in, whether it was the Mongols or others. So you again start to get blood splattered on you a little bit. Now on your uniform, you're washing that. On your belt, they never washed it. So you're starting to get these tinges of red every now and then on these belts. And so if you come across a black belt who had red on their belt, this is not just a master. This is a master who has seen battle, has fought for their life, and fought for the lives of others. So very interesting in that regard. We still try to retain that same method of belt changing color. And so again, uniforms and belt, That's why we do it. And the same thing with our different Shaolin weapons as well too. The different weapons that we have are of Chinese origin. In fact, we were at the Fujian Temple back in 2004 with our group of students, and we got a chance to see, the Southern Shaolin Temple as they were rebuilding it. They had rediscovered it back in the 60s, restarted rebuilding it back in the 90s, and they had the second phase done by the time we visited in 2004. And we ended up, with our group traveling there, and they had a really neat little area of the Shaolin Temple there, the Southern Fujian Temple. There was like a little bit of like a museum inside the chamber, inside that hall, where they all trained and practiced. They had, a glass counter display case of different weapons that they had excavated at the site, that they found there, and daggers and swords, spear tips. And then one of them, which is very unique too, and I like to use this, to explain this concept, is that they had a pair of sai there that most martial artists would consider a Japanese weapon. Of course, as the excavation that took place dated those pair of sai, we call them cha, had dated those sai 300 years prior to any time the Japanese had ever used that type of weapon. So kind of, again, more proof that these are of Chinese origin. So again, a lot of times people just have kind of misconceptions about about what martial arts should be, and I tell people you have to redefine what you think about martial arts. Everything that you've heard about and watched in the movies is kind of not it, in a sense. And so you'll learn more and more. We have at 4 basic levels, kind of going back to the belt ranks and everything, and how we're so goal orientated here in the West. We have student, we have disciple, we have master, and we have grandmaster. Okay, so student is just any particular practitioner. Okay, it's just a student. And then, so again, we have disciple. Now that's when we get to first degree black belt. That's where you get to the second level, classically, the classical second level. So again, you have like this practitioner or the student. Then you have this disciple first black. Now that takes, at least here in the West, take anywhere from a year and a half to 2 years to get to black belt. So imagine if that was your second level. You start something and you don't see the next level for 2 years. So hey Sonia, how are you doing? So welcome, good to see you. So, but imagine again that you're starting at white belt and we go 2 more years, you get to the next level. That's a long time, So we want people to feel a little bit more success, because there is success in between, but harder to discern. Especially if you don't have the patience that you would need in order to do so. So we have, again, 4 lower levels. We have 3 brown belt levels. That's 7 levels before first degree black belt. And so every couple of weeks, every couple of months, you are seeing an improvement. And you can see, and everybody else can see it as well too. So you look over and you go, blue belt. So they must have been training here a little bit longer than this other person who's a yellow belt, right? Or here's a white belt. They must be a new student, someone who hasn't been here very long. And then same thing too, when we get to the black belts, we move now from, instead of testing every, and advancing every couple of months, now you're advancing every couple of years. But again, we've divided the black belt levels into first black, second black, third black, fourth black. When you get to 5th degree black belt, hey, Corina, Koi, how are you doing? When we get to 5th degree black belt is where we have the next level. That's master, the associate master level. Now, to get from 1st degree black belt to 5th degree master level can take anywhere from 10 to 15 years. So imagine again if we told you, all right, 2 more years and you get to your next level. And then 12 more years. And now you're going to get to your next level. That's a long time, again, to not see some sort of, of division in there of your advancement. So we've divided those levels now: second black, first black, second black, third black, fourth black. Then when you get to the master level, 5th degree black belt, we would say again that it's going to take you another 25 years, 30 more years to get to the next level. Okay, so again, you had student, disciple, you had master, and you had grandmaster. 4 levels like that. Right? It'd take you 2 years, take you another 12 years to get to the next one, right? So from this one, it'd take you 2 years to get to that one. To this one, it's going to take you another 12 years, and then it's going to take you another 25, 30 years. And then you got 4 levels. So again, we've divided up even the master levels. From 5th black is associate master, 6th black is master, 7th black, like myself, I'm a senior master, 8th black is an elder master, 9th black is a senior elder master, 10th black would be the grand master. So you have, again, these levels that are kind of divided up, and that gives people now something that's a little bit easier I mean, I don't think anybody would ever go into college and spend 15, 20 years before achieving a degree, where they would be like, no, I'm going to go straight from this freshman right into doctorate level, right? And double majoring or something like that. So instead, you get your bachelor's, and then you may get your master's, and then, so again, you have these levels that kind of, and maybe even little things in between, just so you could see your advancement of where you're at. It's a very Western mindset, in that regard, but it works really well, and we want people to be successful in our art, so this is how we do it as well, too. We divide up those levels and everything. So, again, with our Shaolin Kung Fu, we, again, are not using Japanese weapons. We're not using Japanese uniforms. We're not using Japanese pretty much anything. The Japanese are using ours. Right? It's the Chinese origin, and that's, again, kind of a unique thing that people start figuring out when they start training with us. So, again, just wanted to come on today and do that little bit of a live, talk about some of our secrets in that regard, secrets of origins, right, of Chinese origin. And I hope that everybody does get a chance to experience, our Shaolin Kung Fu. It's a beautiful and amazing art, and there are so many different aspects to it. So at some point in the future, we'll talk a little bit more, guys. I hope everybody's enjoying that beautiful day. It just got a little overcast over the last 30 minutes or so, but it has been a beautiful sunny day here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So again, guys, in the comments, you're welcome to throw in and discuss anything. If you had any more questions on any aspects, put them in the comments, and maybe next time we can discuss them just a little bit. But again, I'm Senior Master Abraham Tames, and I'm glad that you were able to join me today in this live. And if you are interested in doing some online training with us, we have a very special deal right now. It's $99. Tax is already included as well too, and you get 3 months of online training. And again, you can access it from anywhere in the world as long as you've got internet. And we go live 4 days a week. In fact, our lower belts have over 7 hours or 6 hours available to them each week. And you get to learn Shaolin Kung Fu and Tai Chi for health and for fitness and longevity, also self-defense and self-discipline. If you're wanting to lose a little bit of weight and do some exercise, reduce some stress and things of that nature, again, we are here for that. And some have been asking a little bit about diet and exercise as well too, as they really do go hand in hand. And of course, I can help you with that as well too, as I again use a lot of superfoods, and I have a really clean and healthy diet. I would be happy to share with you some of the things that I do. In fact, just about to do a little bit of a workout here in just a few minutes, and I just got kind of inspired to come on and talk a little bit. But I've got my beet juice. I'm just about finished with it, and I'll be finishing that. Just took my super aminos for building muscle and things of that nature. I also brought my MVP pea protein, vegan protein for afterward to recuperate from the muscles and different things like that too, so that I'm not too sore, because I train every single day, sometimes twice a day, just depending. Or like yesterday, spent all day doing Shaolin Kung Fu from 9:30 a.m. all the way up until 4 p.m. And then of course Sunday, ready to go again. That wasn't always the case. There was a time. Hey, David Gray, how you doing? There was not always a time that was the case, guys. On Saturdays, a lot of times I would end my day, a big long day of Kung Fu, and go home and really just knock out. And then Sundays, it was just, don't let me, I didn't want to do anything as far as like physical exercise. I was too sore. I was too tired. I needed to recharge and rejuvenate. And since I've improved and upgraded, up-leveled my nutrition, I now get all the minerals and vitamins. I mean, I was a healthy vegan, before that, but now I've taken it to a whole nother level, and that has been really huge for me as well too. So again, on Sundays now, I have so much energy. I can't wait to work out. Mondays as well too, and start that week all over again. And one of them being, again, just eating some really high quality raw vegan juices, and also other aspects, whether it's my barley juice every single morning, or my power shake that has some of the most amazing ingredients in it. And then there's a love meal that I eat as well too. And then of course in between anything that I eat after I have my superfoods is all just for fun. It's more just to enjoy the taste of food or something like that, because my nutrients and all of the things that I need for my body I actually get in my superfoods, my superfood regimen. So for those, again, that were interested in something like that, feel free to contact me and I will point you the way, guys, and see if it doesn't change your physical life and health. I mean, again, what we put into our bodies is so important. I see people and they're trying to do Shaolin Kung Fu because they want more energy, they want to up-level their bodies, their mind, their spirit, and all these other aspects, right? They want to get rid of addictions, they want to release toxins out of their body, and then they're eating this food that is so counterproductive to that. Sometimes what it takes is a reset, metabolism reset. It takes a cleanse, and that's what these foods do. Just like what Shaolin Kung Fu is doing, but we're doing it again from from another source, and and they go hand in hand, guys. It's so amazing. So I recommend to everybody at some point, you got to get on some superfoods, even if it's just keeping your regular diet, whatever you're doing right now, and just adding a couple of things. Whether it's a barley juice in the morning, which is really inexpensive, or whether it's adding a super nutritious power shake. Again, I have found the purest and best food that I have ever experienced in my whole life, and I'm now, just like with Shaolin Kung Fu, I believe it is the best exercise on the planet. Well, the food that I'm eating right now, I consider the best food on the planet as well too. It is the Shaolin of foods, and so if you're interested in that, I can again give you a $50 gift card, and you can start your own regimen of nutrition, guys. So, all right. So, at any rate, I'm gonna start doing an exercise here, guys. A workout. I've got a lot of things that I want to do, and I'm so glad to be able to connect with you guys today. So, I hope everybody is doing well. Hope everybody is healthy, happy, and feeling really good. And again, I'll hopefully see you guys in class online, or next time I go on live. I hope that you will be there as well too. So, all right, everyone, take care. It's great to connect with you guys.